Hello, everyone. I am really thrilled to introduce you to the world-renowned soul regression therapist and author, Dr. Linda Bachman. Linda has 45 years of private practice experience, including over 25 years guiding soul regressions. Linda was trained by soul regression pioneer Dr. Michael Newton, and they worked together training other therapists. Linda has conducted thousands of past life and between life soul regressions in person and remotely, and she founded the Raven Heart Center and Training Institute in Boulder, Colorado in 1997. And she teaches regularly worldwide. She also provides spiritual mentoring and psycho-spiritual grief sessions on Zoom. Linda's books are Souls on Earth, The Evolving Soul, and Bringing Your Soul to Light. And there's one more book in the making, right, Linda, that you will perhaps talk about later uh, during this
Yeah.
gathering. Linda is an international expert in understanding how reincarnation plays a pivotal role in our personal growth and relationships. And Linda also happens to be my teacher and mentor, and I have learned so much from her about soul regression work, especially about the types of souls present on the earth at this time. And today we will talk to Linda about her book, Souls on Earth Exploring Interplanetary Life. It's a really exciting topic. And I would like to underscore how important this book has been for me personally in understanding um, souls who are here on Earth from other dimensions. Moreover, Linda's work has helped me understand who I am, who I truly am, and what my purpose is. And I have so many questions. So without further ado, let us welcome Linda to the Reincarnation Book Club. Welcome, Linda.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hey,
It's great to be here with all of you, but especially with a couple of you that I've known for a very long time. So thank you.
We are thrilled to, really thrilled to have you. So please share with our audience with a little bit of context about your early life, what made you move in the direction of soul regression therapy. I
Okay.
think we'd all love to know.
Okay. Okay. Well, some of you know my story and some of you don't. So, okay. So, I often say to people that come for regression, I say to them that there are two flavors of people that seek regression. There are sort of two flavors of people that become overtly spiritual. And I'm one flavor, but not the other flavor. So one flavor that I'm not, and I'm sure some of you are going to relate to the first flavor that I am not. And that's someone who, oh gosh, anywhere from ages, let's just say 5 to maybe 15 or so, knew you were a soul in a body, knew you had a guide, just basically knew there was a lot more than just this life, this body. And that, that for you was just absolutely normal and accepted, and it's just something you grasped from an early point in your life. The other flavor, of which I am a part of the other flavor, are those of us who there were inklings, maybe there were, little plants that kind of barely pop their head above ground, meaning plants that, indications of spirituality, which I can talk about briefly for me. But that second flavor that I am is someone who was well into their adult life, not understanding soul, not understanding past lives, that there's a bigger picture and we are not just this life, this body, and that surfaces well into our adult lives. So my story in brief is that in 1993, now everybody, it's fine, you're going to know how old I am. In 1993, I was in my middle 40s, practicing I'm a licensed psychologist by training, practicing in a general private practice, working with clients, as you would all imagine, all types of issues from depression to anxiety to career to relationship, et cetera, et cetera. I was always fascinated with grief, death, and dying. That was sort of the plant that maybe wasn't tiny, but the plant that had, peeked its head enough above ground, which I didn't understand, but the plant that showed the top of the plant coming, germinating and popping above the earth was that, this psychologist, my formal name, Dr. Linda Bachman, was doing a lot of grief counseling and involved in hospice groups and that sort of thing. But I didn't know why. And I didn't struggle to know why, but I didn't know why. And I'd had some of my own grief and loss experiences prior to being in my middle 40s in the early to mid 90s. In 1993, on a day in April, a very dear and close colleague of mine, a man at age 32, who I co-established a group practice of psychologists and psychiatrists. His nickname was Bud. Bud passed at the age of 32 in April of 1993. It was sad from a human standpoint. He had one of those lung asbestos exposure types of cancers, and it took his life at age 32. So Bud crosses over, and that's not the term I would have used back then. Bud crosses over, and within about 48 hours of his passing, I'm convinced he's talking to me from the other side. That was completely a new and rather weird experience back then. He's communicating with me from the other side. I have no doubt that it's Bud. Most of it was heartwarming. Most of it was, oh, my goodness, you're here. I sense you. Seemingly you're okay. I didn't know how that worked at all. And I began to sense, let me back up. I had, within a year of Bud's passing, prior to his passing, a client that was doing grief work with me as the therapist, a client I'd been working with who'd had a adult son die, young adult son die. She walked in with Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters one day prior to 93 and thrust this book at me and said, "Oh, Linda, I found this book and you have to read it. And it's just helping me so much." Prior to April of 93, I took that book home, skimmed it. It just didn't resonate. I'll be honest. I didn't know what to do with it. I wasn't sort of against what Brian Weiss was writing about, but I took it back to the client a week or two later and said, "Thanks, great. Let's get on with your grief counseling." Then Bud passes and he begins to talk to me from the other side, and he began to show me scenes of past lives in my mind's eye. So I thought, when you're trained as a psychologist, as some of you may be, it's like, is there something wrong with me? Do I need meds? Do I need some formal treatment? Or is this real? So I'm experiencing Bud today. I know a lot about my past lives with the soul of Bud and a lot about that soul that is my colleague whose nickname was Bud. So I've been married 20 or 25 years by this point. My husband and I have always been, some of you know my beloved husband. We've always been very progressive, very open in that respect. So I say to my husband, Earl, who knew Bud as a lunch friend and a golfing friend, I say to Earl a couple of days after Bud's passed, I say to Earl, we're so incredibly sad that Bud has died. That's the word I would have used. And I said to Earl, but could you sit down? And this is really a totally true story. Could you please sit down? I need to tell you what I'm experiencing. So Earl sits down. I begin to explain to him Bud's talking to me from the other side. Bud's showing me past lives. And I honestly think that Earl's going to look at me and just say, oh, honey, you've kind of, I don't know what in the heck's going on with you, but this is really weird what you're telling me. But that's not what happened. And so Earl looks back at me calmly and he says, okay. And I look back at him and go, you mean just okay? You don't think this is really, really strange? And Earl says, no. And so I say to Earl, um, why? Why don't you want to just say, I don't understand, I don't get this, I don't know if it's real, but that's not what Earl says. And so he says, I ask him, why are you so calm about this? And basically what he said, which now, 31 plus years later makes a lot of sense to me, but Earl says, well, and we're about the same age. Earl says, well, only now do I remember something I must have repressed from my childhood. And Earl says, when I was a boy growing up in my own private time and space out in the countryside where I grew up, says Earl, he tells me, he says, I knew about my past lives. I knew details of my past lives. I knew they were my lives. I knew they were real. But he says, nobody in my world back in what would that be, the middle 50s, no one ever talked about reincarnation, soul, past lives. So Earl says, I just tucked it all away and forgot about it. And so basically, fortunately, and I'm convinced this was all sort of scripted at the soul level, that I was going to have support from my spouse. Earl says, no, I've always believed in this. And so if you want to go learn about reincarnation, past lives, souls, how we plan our lives, where we come from, go do it. Earl's not a psychologist. He has a PhD in political science and was an academic for 30 plus years. So that was great permission for me. Like, okay, somebody supports me. I've not lost my mind. And that's what led me, as you know, Smita,
Yeah.
um, that was the open door for me.
Right, right. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think a lot of people don't have that kind of support. So definitely, it helps to have a partner who doesn't think you're going cuckoo. So, um, so Linda, your books are so enlightening, especially when you talk about the different kinds of souls that are present on the earth plane at this time. And especially the book Souls on Earth talks extensively about interplanetary life. And a lot of people have a lot of ideas about what is known as extraterrestrials. So, um, I would like to ask you, how did you start coming upon this information that there may be souls, there are these different kinds of souls, and then realizing that you could actually categorize them in a way that started to make sense of what may be going on at this time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll just a couple of precursor comments, Mita. Excuse me. I started taking training after that experience in 93. I started reading everything I could put my hands on that I felt was grounded, um, and started training in regression. And fortunately, I already had taken, who knows why, probably guided, I'd already taken hypnosis training, which I really wasn't using a whole lot in my practice, but I already had basic hypnotherapy training. Um, which of course, everybody think about your own life as I talk, because here's what's so important. And think about steps along the way in your life that perhaps you didn't understand until a number of years went by, because that's true for me. I just took hypnotherapy training because I had some colleagues that were taking it. So I already knew, um, how hypnosis works. Hypnosis is purely relaxation. A lot of people misunderstand that. So first, I needed to find grounded training in past life regression, which I found, and I trained in past life regression. And then, somewhere around probably 97, 98, I came across Dr. Michael Newton's first book. His first book was published in 1994. And Dr. Michael Newton, as some of you probably know, wrote seminal books in the field of what we call, what he originally called life between lives spiritual regression. So I met Michael, and I'm going to shorten the story without all kinds of details, but so I met Michael Newton, who had figured out how to guide clients not just into past lives, but how to guide clients through a past life to the final scene, to the closing scene, to the death scene, and then to connect at the soul level as it happens every time we pass. That slice of soul that lives within us, that resides within our bodies, when cardiopulmonary functions have ceased, that slice of soul operates on autopilot and just leaves the non-functioning body and elevates back and returns back into higher self, steps back into the totality of higher self. So I met Michael. He'd been doing the work for years. He was just ready to train people in his late 60s. And I trained, and then Michael and I co-taught together, but I trained with Dr. Michael Newton in the work of understanding soul and spirituality and how we plan our lives. I found it fascinating. And at the very same time, maybe like some of you, I found it completely fascinating. And yet part of me kept being pulled back into my human self and my sort of professionally trained self of, oh my gosh, I'll never, be able to do any more work because people that send me referrals will think I'm ungrounded. Um, Still, that didn't hold me back because that's I know now that it was part of the plan of my current life that these sort of open doors would present themselves, and I'd have to decide whether I walked through the doors or I didn't walk through the doors. So just briefly, and then Smita, we can go into this in more detail. When I trained with Michael, he just knew a smidgen about souls that didn't, about souls that incarnate on Earth, but are not souls that really were designed to incarnate on Earth. Michael talked just a tiny bit about that. And so for my first, maybe 6, 7, 8 years of guiding what today I call between life soul regression, soul level regression that includes past life. In the early years of my practice, most of my clients were souls that had primarily incarnated on Earth, that were designed to incarnate, and we can talk more about that. But then 6 or 8 years later, sometime around 2005 to 2007 or so, all of a sudden I started noticing in my regression practice that has been for years multiple regression clients a week, I started noticing that clients were showing up in my practice that were souls that, my term is interplanetary, but that's synonymous with ET, that were souls that are ET souls. They originate from somewhere in the universe that is not tied to Earth, that is tied to the greater celestial realm. And all of a sudden, I realized after maybe a couple of years that 50 to 60% of my clients back in the 2000s were what I call interplanetary souls, or souls that originate somewhere other than Earth's spiritual realm and aren't technically designed to come to Earth, but come to Earth because they come from healthy locations in the greater spiritual realm, in the celestial realm. And Earth needs the perspective of these interplanetary souls. So, Smita, I'll stop there, but you know me and I know where you're probably headed. So we'll get to the other type of soul as well.
Yes, exactly. the reason I was pulled to your work, Linda, was because my clients were not going into past lives but other dimensions. And I just needed to figure out how to help them. And your books, your work really helped me figure that out for my clients. So you mentioned in the training and in the books that there are three types of advanced souls. I think it would be good for people to know what you mean by advanced souls. And then also that there are three types that have incarnated on Earth at this time. Could you elaborate on the types of advanced souls and also share information on, because I know you have so much work that you've done in this area. So if you can give our audience an idea of how many are probably present at this time, I think
Mm,
it would help us understand.
okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Okay. I always try to make this as clear as I can. So what I've learned, and I hope everyone kind of grasps this, I've learned from client to client to client to client. And that's where the information comes from. So, kind of start with basics. So on this planet we call Earth, where we all live, the vast majority of humans, incarnate souls, are what we call earth-based souls. And what I mean by an earth-based soul is that is a soul that was created to incarnate on Earth primarily. That's a soul that starts off as a young, immature soul. I always use the example of, think about for anybody that has children or that has spent time around, let's just say, kindergartners. When you have a kindergarten age child, you don't just say, okay, dear sweet son or daughter, bye bye in the morning, bye bye, walk out the front door of the house, walk the 3 blocks to get to the bus stop, and find the bus stop, make sure you get there, cross the intersections, and get on the bus and go to school and find your classroom. Okay, who does that? What we do is, it's okay, kindergarten son or daughter, let's go get in the car. I'm going to take you to school. I'm going to walk you into the classroom. I'm going to make sure, your coat gets hung up where it belongs and your lunch goes where it goes. And probably during most of your kindergarten year, I'm going to make sure you're taken care of and supported. And then in first grade, you're going to be less supported. And in second grade, you're going to be less supported. Well, that's the way a soul evolves. So earth-based souls start out as young souls. We were all young souls at a certain point in time. Probably if you wanted to listen and be part of listening to me, but part of the Reincarnation Book Club, you're not a young soul, or you wouldn't be interested in these types of topics. So earth-based souls start off as immature souls. There actually is a place in the spiritual realm that we might call the soul nursery that helps prepare earth-based, very young souls to incarnate. And then earth-based souls keep coming to Earth over and over and over and over to grow and evolve on Earth. And to sort of not make it too complicated, we have free will when we come to Earth. So we can make free will choices that aren't the most useful choices. We gather karma. We can balance that out in later lives, of course. We also gather dharma. We gather accomplishments, or dharma means soul intention. We gather dharma, which means, what did I learn? What did I accomplish in a previous life? And so about 90 to 95% of humans on Earth are Earth-based souls, and that same 90 to 95% are, if we put soul evolution on a 10-point scale, 90 to 95% of all humans are 3s to 6s and not evolved souls. Then if we take that, let's call it, just for the sake of discussion, let's use the percentage, which this has come forward in regressions many times for me. So if we say there are 5% of humans that are more highly experienced souls, we have to work hard to become that, there's nothing wonderful. We have to work hard to get there. About 5, maybe 6% of humans are more experienced souls. And then you have to split that apart. This is what I've learned from regression. You have to split that apart into Earth-based souls, which is probably about 2 to 3% of that 5 to 6% are experienced Earth-based souls. The other 2 or 3%, we have to split apart into 2 other types of souls. So the 2 other types, one is what we've talked about, my term, interplanetary, call them star seeds, call them ETs, same term. Take that 2 to 3%, split it in half into 1.5, 1.75% that are interplanetary souls. So I'll just talk briefly and we can go further, Smita, if you want. Interplanetary souls come from a multitude of locations in the celestial realm. They don't necessarily, some do come from names of places you would think about: Arcturus, the Pleiades, Andromeda, Orion's belt. But a lot of interplanetary souls that agree to come to Earth come from locations where the name of the location is meaningless to us. But there's only one basic reason that interplanetary souls come to Earth, and that's because they come from healthy cultures somewhere in the celestial realm, usually somewhere inside of the solar system. We're sort of narcissistic here. We call our solar system the solar system. Most interplanetary souls come from within the solar system that contains Earth. A few come from the Milky Way galaxy outside of Earth's solar system, or the solar system that Earth belongs to. But these interplanetary souls agree to come to Earth because they come from healthy cultures. Now, these healthy cultures can be purely mental, purely emotional, science-oriented, child-oriented. They have romantic partners in some places. They don't have romantic partners in other places. They have children in some locations. They don't have children. But interplanetary souls agree to come to Earth to aid humanity. And actually, it's quite challenging oftentimes for what I call an IP soul to come to Earth, because Earth is so outside the norm for these IP souls. So a lot of interplanetary souls struggle with social, emotional, physiological issues like the autistic spectrum, ADHD, allergies, autoimmune disorders, chemical sensitivities, difficulty being in large crowds, energy, and that kind of thing. We need interplanetary souls on planet Earth. Then, just to introduce the other group of souls. So as my regression practice moved along, it was like, Linda learns about Earth-based souls. Then some years later, Linda learns about interplanetary souls. And then some years later, maybe the last, 10 to 12, 13 years, I started working with more clients who, I'm going to back up one half step. Regression work means I don't give the information to the client gives the information to me.
Right.
The client actually channels their own soul, their higher self, and channels their guides. So maybe 10 or 12 years ago, I began to work with clients that I started to learn were a third type of soul, meaning souls from the angelic realm. So the angelic realm is the realm, I like to call it a cadre of souls. It is we might say, location in the greater Earth's spiritual realm that serves the divine. That's pick your own term. Serves source, serves God, serves the Tao, serves Great Spirit. A term I use a lot because it comes up in regression is the Manu, Manu, which is a Sanskrit term for divine guidance or divine soul guidance. So I've worked a lot with angelic realm souls who are obviously in body, because that's how I worked with them. And they serve source, and there's a signature core energy to an angelic realm soul, and that is that they carry this pure energy of love and compassion. I'll be honest, sometimes when I work with an angelic realm soul, it almost takes my breath away, because often these are people who are so non-judgmental that it's a highly unique quality, but that they are like ambassadors of source energy. And we need, in my opinion, badly on the planet, ambassadors of love and compassion and non-judgmental attitude. So those are the three types of souls.
Great. Thank you, Linda. I mean, that was a great explanation. Um, So I'm sure everybody's thinking about this, and I certainly thought about this when I read your book and before I had my BLSR, before I found out where I was from, um, that, Earth is so challenging for IP souls. And by the way, I love the term IP because I feel like ET has some strange connections. Not everybody thinks that ET is good energy and all of that. So when I think of these souls as IP souls and angelic realm souls, it just feels very positive to me. Um, but knowing that Earth isn't exactly a very easy planet to live on, there are extremes here, there's duality, there's density, emotional upheavals, death, grief, politics, wars, family feud, like you name it, it's all here.
Right.
So why would IP souls or angelic realm souls want to come to Earth? I mean, do you think there is a personal reason, or are they just following orders from the Manu? Like, why would they want to come here?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great, I love what you're saying. Well, are they following orders from the Manu? Um, yeah, let me just kind of pause. Well, first of all, it is my understanding that no soul incarnates on Earth who is completely coerced, whether they're Earth-based, IP, angelic. We always agree to incarnate. That there may be pressure and encouragement. I don't want to say there isn't, but there is the sense of, I agreed to do this. Now, I'll say, which probably this won't surprise anybody listening, there are times when I've worked with clients, and others of you in this group that guide regression have probably heard this too. There are times when I'm working with a client in regression, they're discovering who they are, why they're here, working a lot on past lives, but soul agreements, whether they're, just to make this simple, EB, Earth-based, IP, interplanetary, ARs, what I call angelic realm souls. There are clients that will say, sort of like, not just completely joking, what was I thinking to come here? But it's an interesting question, Smita, because I'm trying to think how to say this. Certainly there are many places where souls incarnate in the greater celestial realm, and I have absolutely no doubt of that from my years of guiding regression. But there is something about the intention of Earth and the intentions that are not yet for sure fully satisfied, that Earth was created to be a location where souls embodied, but souls, as I said earlier, souls have free will to see if this could be a successful location for incarnation. So, therefore, many souls, including people, I'm sure, in this group and those of you listening or who will listen to the recording later on, said, okay, I'll volunteer, I'll go to Earth, and I'll do what I can, but I know it's not an easy place to go to. But I know that, the fancy word, the word recalcitrant comes to me. And, probably most of you know what that means. Recalcitrant means kind of kicking and screaming, or, oh, do I really want to do what I came here to do? But I've also heard from some clients in a way that Earth is an experiment. Earth is an experiment to see if we can get this, relatively speaking, to get this figured out where, and, not to be overly Pollyanna, not to be overly esoteric, but where all people's needs matter, where all ways of life and ethnicities and cultures and, are important. And, we could spend the whole hour and a half, which we won't, talking about how that isn't happening on this planet. So there's a willingness to come into body, no matter which of the three types of souls you are, to aid this location called Earth.
And is there, Linda, would you say that um, even if you are an angelic soul or an IP soul, spiritual growth probably is something that everybody has to go through anyway as a soul, no matter what kind. And so
Oh,
perhaps coming on the earth plane allows people to grow no matter where they are coming from.
oh yeah. I mean, that's a really useful comment, Smita. Whether you're Earth-based and, IP or angelic, we come here to continue growing and evolving, and no soul comes here perfectly evolved. So all souls come here to work on ongoing evolution, and to clean up past karmic issues, but to work on ongoing evolution. But I'll just add in, and, just different extraneous things pop into my mind. Of late, I've been talking to two or three or four people I know well that are colleagues. And one in particular, I'll make this generic so I don't out this person. But recently I've had a lot of discussion with a close friend and colleague, who's a beautiful teacher, and who recently went through a serious health scare, and which could have turned into potentially a terminal diagnosis. It did not turn into a terminal diagnosis, and it was a very challenging experience for this woman. But what she realized is that she walked up to what do I want to say? Well, walked up to a choice point, soul level and human
Right.
level, walked up to a choice point and decided if she wanted to add on more soul evolution to this current lifetime. She's
Got
accomplished
it.
a great deal. She's a beautiful teacher and writer. Um, but she walked up to this choice point, and fortunately, it appears, I like to use the word addendum. It appears that she's added on a soul agreement to her original uh, coming into body, her original soul
Mm-hmm.
agreement. She's added what I like to call an addendum, and it was tough. It was a tough human experience, and I bet at the soul level, a tough decision. So,
Sure, sure.
yeah.
Oh, fascinating stuff. I can't wait to hear more on that. Um, so Linda, you describe in your book really well certain defining characteristics that help us identify IP souls. And what are some of those characteristics? Just in case folks here want to tick off a list they might have, or it might make them think like, oh, I have a child, or I had a
Mm,
mother who, was like that.
right.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
what
Okay.
it
Yeah.
would be fun to hear about what some of those characteristics are.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. I'll kind of do my best to define a list. And everybody, as you listen to this list, I want you to think from minor to major. In other words, some people can, put a check mark next to almost everything I say on the list. And the symptoms related to these check marks are pretty substantial. But keep in mind it's a spectrum.
Mhm.
So there are IP souls that manage pretty well in the human body, and there are others that don't. And usually the reason that some interplanetary souls manage fairly well in the human body is usually because they've had a fair number of incarnations on Earth. So they've become adapted to um, the energy, the chemicals in the environment, the diet, and that sort of thing. So, common signs of a interplanetary soul. One easy one to start with is the autistic spectrum. A lot of the time, people, children or adults, diagnosed somewhere on the autistic spectrum are interplanetary souls. And, there's nothing wrong with these people. It's that they don't come from social and communicative environments that are like the human world. They probably don't talk, they communicate telepathically. Um, they may not socialize a lot. Therefore, the social issues that show up on the autistic spectrum. So autistic spectrum, um, minor to major digestive disorders. So, and everybody, as you listen, because what popped into my mind just there and why I paused, I have a family member who has serious Crohn's disease. This particular family member, I know a lot about his soul. He's he's not an IP soul. So everybody, as you listen, don't just quickly pigeonhole.
Mhm.
Somebody that has severe Crohn's disease is not automatically an interplanetary soul, but all kinds of allergies in general, and then food allergies. So chemical allergies, medication allergies, and food allergies, and digestive. Often someone whose diet is really, really narrow. They can't eat this, they can't eat that, blah, blah, blah. That's often an IP soul. Autoimmune disorders. Let me just think for a minute. Um, So here's one way you can often figure out an IP soul, even if this person's not had a regression. Couple things. Often interplanetary souls were children that were fascinated with the night sky. I've heard this more times than I can remember. If I do a regression, the client discovers or resubstantiates their interplanetary soul. They were a child at age 5, 6, and 7, where their parents said, okay, Susie or Johnny, come away from the window, because they love to stare at the night sky because they know where they come from.
Right.
Interplanetary souls are almost always extremely advanced in certain skills, whether it's writing skills, spiritual abilities. An interplanetary soul may struggle to operate in the human body or operate in human ways of life, but they come from an advanced culture. Therefore, they have some type of advanced skill. It could be music, it could be art, it could be IT, it could be anything. So, and then just people where, so probably all of you know, or maybe it's not obvious, I'm an earth-based soul. I don't take a lot of medications, but I'm not overly sensitive to medications. IP souls often have opposite effects, adverse effects from, some kind of script that they were given. Yeah, so maybe that's a good.
Great. No, I
Yeah.
think that's a great starting point for anybody who wants to, who's wondering whether they are an IP soul. They've always kind of felt like a, they were a fish out of water. It's always felt a little bit strange being in the body. Or if they have a loved one, a child, for example, who struggled with autism or any other kind of what we consider disorders
Right.
in our world, human world.
Yeah.
So, I, I and we've talked about this so much, Linda, in your work and in your book as well, where you mentioned that IB souls are a gift to us, and they're here to raise the vibration of Earth. Now, what are some of the challenges that you feel Earth is facing, um, because of which IB souls are coming here? What challenges are they equipped to help us with and help us navigate through? Um, I would love for you to say a few things about that.
Yeah. And then that might be a good segue, Smita, into how does the higher realm try to aid Earth?
Hmm.
Well, I'll just say, I mean, again, no one's listening if you're not spiritually oriented. So for spiritually oriented people, we often come in sort of two, not the same two categories I talked about in the beginning, but sort of two categories. Some of us, and I'm this way, and obviously I'm an earth-based soul, so it's probably part of the reason I'm this way. I am very focused on current issues, geopolitical issues, problems on our planet, the way food is processed, healthy food in the grocery store, non-healthy food in the grocery store. I'm pretty focused on way of life and that sort of thing. As opposed to some of you probably listening, spiritually oriented people, it's like you don't want to watch or read the news because it's too difficult and you're too triggered by it, and it just affects you in very much a problematic way, and that's fine. We need to know who we are and what works for us and what doesn't work for us. um, but we see, I think, for anybody that either turns on the news on the TV, goes to a web page from, or hopefully does a reads more than one web page so that you compare information you're receiving and to see what's valid and what's invalid. But we see so many issues on our planet that are, whether it's related to serious geopolitical issues that relates to Russia and the Ukraine, or Israel and Hamas, and that kind of thing. The higher realm is highly concerned about how humans treat humans. And I don't mean necessarily any of us, but the higher realm is concerned about how we treat the earth, how we treat animals, how we treat each other. That isn't always the most useful. So I know from listening to clients and one or two people that are capable channels that I value and trust the material that they channel, um, that that the higher realm, I'm trying to put this so it's clear. The higher realm works to prepare more interplanetary souls that are
Mm-hmm.
obviously highly experienced, more angelic souls that are highly experienced,
Right,
uh, to come to Earth and to manage on Earth. And it takes a fair amount of preparation
right.
to prepare an interplanetary or an angelic soul that may never have been here or may have only been here 2 or 3 times. It takes a lot of preparation because IP souls and AR souls come from healthy locations, whereas Earth-based souls evolve coming here to Earth over and over and over,
Mm-hmm.
repetitively, and get somewhat used to coming to Earth. So I know there's a push in the higher realm to prepare more IPs and more ARs to come to Earth to bring that healthy perspective, um,
Right,
to this planet.
right, right. And I've heard you talk about how the IP souls and angelic souls are here to show us a higher way of living, deeper compassion and more love and care for everything, for nature, for animals, um, and I can also see how being here because they haven't lived in the chaos that earth plane can be and the harsh energies, so I'm sure it affects them in different ways. um, Now this was a question I thought would be really interesting to know that, well, we have these souls on earth, we have EB souls who are really experienced. They really understand how things work on the earth plane. There's IP souls who are bringing their special gifts, and there are certain things that they know better. For example, perhaps scientifically they're more advanced, or perhaps they know more about farming sustainably, things like that. And then angelic souls, understand love and compassion in a way that others don't. Now, do these souls work together? Do they ever like come here on a project
Mm.
and work together?
Yeah, great question. That's beautiful because that's kind of where my mind was going, and then it probably would be useful also to talk about Earth-based souls and the coordination of experienced Earth-based souls. But well, maybe this, I'll pull all these pieces together as best I can. So, okay, so uh, most of us, if we're regression therapists, we've probably had clients that, sort of quote unquote, walked in the door for a regression and said, which I've heard this many times, oh, Linda, I'm ready for my regression. And what I'm almost sure I'm going to be told, among other things in my regression, is that this is my last life, my last incarnation, and I get to be done. Okay. I mean, I've heard that a zillion times. So here's the thing, and it's part of what I find important to teach and what my guides push me to teach. Um, no matter which of these three types of souls that you are, you of course have in your body, you of course have a higher self. That's the soul energy you didn't bring into body. So, you know, Linda's alive because she has a slice, a holographic portion of her soul energy that resides within me that caused me to live and breathe at birth.
Right.
The remainder of my soul, and we can, if you want, we can get into, can we have more than one incarnation simultaneously? That's another topic. But the remainder of the Linda soul, or the same would be true of Smita, the remainder of the Linda or the Smita soul is our higher self that resides where our soul originates. So as an earth-based soul, my higher self resides at what we might call fifth dimension or higher,
Mm-hmm.
where souls work together. So higher selves, no matter which type you are, higher selves have roles and responsibilities at all times in the spiritual frequency where you come from to do coordination work. So to make this maybe not quite so muddy, um, there is an Earth High Council or an Earth Congress. Now, please don't think about the US Congress, because then you'll go, oh my gosh, they're a mess. Because of course, in many ways, they are a mess. But there is an Earth High Council or an Earth Congress. There is an Interplanetary Council, and there's an Angelic Council. I'll try my best to define these. So the Earth High Council is made up of higher selves of experienced Earth-based souls that are probably sevens, eights, and above, because they have the wisdom, they have the Earth experience to work together. So what's their purpose for working together? The purpose for, just to use EBs first, the purpose for the higher selves of experienced Earth-based souls to work together in a Congress in the higher realm is to do what they can to guide Earth, is to come to various agreements of how they can do their best to guide souls in body, Earth-based souls in
Mm-hmm.
body,
Right.
to make healthy choices. Now, they don't come down here and like we're not marionettes. So it's not like all these strings are pulled and we're forced to do anything. We still have
Right.
to make free will choice. So that's the Earth High Council. The Interplanetary High Council is made up of representatives from a variety of locations, mostly in the solar system that contains Earth,
Mm-hmm.
almost again like a Congress, to
Right.
work together to try to help humanity. The same is true of the Angelic Council, to work together to assist humanity. And the angelic realm, as probably most of you would imagine, the leaders of the angelic realm are the archangels. And it's my understanding from regression, the senior archangel is Archangel Michael, who is the lead coordinator, but there are other archangels that coordinate the angelic realm. Some of the archangels come into body on earth and some don't. So, yeah.
Got it. Got it. Wonderful. I have a lot of questions, but I feel it's time. We are after 5 o'clock now here.
Yeah.
So it's time to open the floor up for questions from our audience. And so let us see. Gonna go to gallery view and please raise your hands to ask a question. And feel free to unmute yourself after I call your name. Let's see. Is anyone? Okay, Michael. Yes. Please unmute yourself.
All right. Am I okay? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Are we living in a simulation, and is there such a thing as a soul catcher, and we can't get out of this simulation, and it's a constant recycling of the souls that we can't get beyond to the source? I've heard people with that theory. I know it's crazy, but you probably run across it, Linda. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I was about to say, Michael, before you asked your question, I wanted to say to people, don't think any questions off base, because no questions off base. No, and I can only give you answers, Michael, based on years of guiding multiple clients. No, I don't think we're living in a simulation at all. I believe that just focusing on Earth and focusing on humanity, people, I think spiritual people need to be careful not to make souls, spirituality, reincarnation overly airy-fairy. And by that I mean that it's grounded reality, that our souls evolve in real time. Earth is intended and hopefully continues to evolve in real time. We're not stuck in a forced, the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
I don't believe that's going on. And honestly, I've never heard that from a regression client in almost 30 years.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I want to ask you on that, because you get all these conspiracy theories, Linda, and you just go a little crazy with it, and it's like, I want to get out of this crazy place one time and get out of here, period. Now, and I don't want to be stuck in a recycle bin. And you
Right.
hear all this stuff, and it's like the flat Earth and all that other stuff that we run into. These are just questions that I have to ask, and you're probably a pretty good authority to answer them. So thank you, appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Thank
You're
you.
you're
Thank you for
you're
your
welcome.
question.
Yeah.
Lauren, please unmute.
Hi, thank you so much for calling on me. Thank you for hosting. And Linda, thank you so much for being here. Okay. I'm not sure how to ask this, so I'm just going to give it a shot. Do you have a sense that there is other councils or other organizational, I'm not even sure what the right word is, in other worlds that are beyond our solar system or galaxy? Like, do you have a sense, or have you had anyone who's maybe journeyed, or their soul has journeyed outside of it, like an intergalactic kind of thing? Because I could kind of appreciate a universe or world in which, we are governed by some properties that are scientific, et cetera, where, maybe, I mean, we're only limited in this vessel, right? But maybe our soul experience is only limited to this certain circumscribed, for lack of a better word, spiritually geographic field. Or what about outside of that? That's just my curiosity. Thank you.
Oh, Lauren, that's a great question. Because I work with so many interplanetary souls in my practice, I mean, I would say that currently when I work with clients, and I guide between life soul regression 2 to 4 times a week, most weeks. So yes, I totally believe what you're saying is true. Oh my gosh, some of the client sessions are completely fascinating. From the standpoint of client, and I don't tell the clients where they're going. I just support the process and they tell me. Clients that came from just as an example, clients whose soul originated, IP soul clients, whose soul originated somewhere in the greater celestial realm, and I'm not going to pigeonhole whether it's inside of the solar system that contains Earth or outside of the solar system that contains Earth. But I have clients who will say, my soul originated in a location, a planet, a star system, an interdimensional space, that sort of thing. But either I don't go back there because I don't need to go back there, or that original location is gone. It was either naturally destroyed or destroyed in some opposing location, some kind of war in the IP realm. And then sometimes these clients function on spacecraft, and their home location is literally a spacecraft that is described in, you know, fascinating, exquisite detail. So I have no doubt, Lauren, that what you're saying is true, that there's a lot more going on in the greater celestial realm. What my guides, for me, what happens for me and what my guides tell me is they bring it back to Earth and they bring it back to humanity, because all my clients agreed to be on Earth in one way or another to support humanity.
Well,
So
we're all here.
that's, yes, exactly. Exactly. But that's a great question.
Thank you. That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
thank you for your question, Lauren. It just is very comforting to know that all these wonderful souls, we're all working together to make Earth a better place, um, in our own way, finding our purpose here. Um, Vinita had a question she asked a little bit early on, and her question was, can interplanetary souls come from cosmic races that are, say, serpents or cats, and so on? Do you see that, Linda?
I mean, yes, I'll answer that in a couple of ways. Of course, I say of course, the physical structure of an IP soul at home is so varied, It might look human, it might look like a cat, it might look like a dragon. There may be no dense physical structure.
Right.
And what it brings to mind, so I'll just say this briefly, we can talk about this before we finish this evening, but my husband Earl and I, along with a wonderful co-leader, some of you may know, we just a couple of months ago, we came back from co-leading a group to Egypt. And Egypt is the most advanced of the original civilizations on our planet. The gods and goddesses, the pantheon of deities that were determined and were taught in the early dynasties of Egypt, they had all kinds of forms, from birds to cats to, I mean, probably most of you know that. And because our time in Egypt was spent, my co-leader is an interplanetary soul who lives in Egypt and can track her past lives and her work in the early dynasties, who can read the cartouches on the wall, that can read the figures that you see in these ancient sites. I have no doubt that physical form can be almost anything in terms of an IP soul.
Got it, got it. One question that I really wanted to ask Linda was, if we do know an IP soul, say I have a child who may be an IP soul, how do I take care? How do I support them? If you can offer any advice on how to best support somebody that we know uh, is an IP soul.
Yeah, I mean, that's beautiful, Smita. Let me just say, a colleague of mine was commenting about this to me recently as she was listening to me talk about IP souls. Some IP souls, and then I'll come to the notion of being a parent of an IP child. Some IP souls, child or adult, some struggle mightily to be in body, to function, to deal with sort of the complexities of human life. And in some cases in human life, the lack of awareness of honoring all people and all of that. So I'll just say that there are many, certainly not all IP souls, struggle to make ends meet financially, and to manage in all ways in body. But yes, I think it's important if you're the parent of an interplanetary soul child, and that would not be unlikely if you're a spiritual person, then your soul may well have agreed to be the parent of an IP soul child because we need that advanced soul on the planet. The IP soul child needs to be accepted for their perhaps social limitations, all types of sensitivities from, something kinesthetic, diet, learning, need for isolation, that it really requires the parent of parent or parents, and siblings and family members of IP soul children to accept and honor the unique needs of that IP soul client, and not, not misjudge that child, or that child may need, special help in school because, they're not good at test taking, or they're learning challenged.
Right.
We need their wisdom. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Carol, please unmute. And then Tiffany.
It's so funny, Linda, you were describing me to a T. I'm definitely one of those IP souls. And I have dyslexia too. And it made me wonder, I wonder if that's part of the whole IP thingy. But I have another question, coming back to something you talked about, the geopolitical thing that you're concerned with. And I have some concerns about it also. And I can't talk about the way I'm concerned with my normal friends, because what I'm seeing is these things that are happening have some past life unresolved karma. What do you think about that? Have you looked at that by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, this is the beauty of a group and things that many of you, in this case, you, Carol, are going to bring forward. That's an important piece and kind of a fascinating piece. I have worked with some clients, some interplanetary clients, who have karma from an interplanetary past life or interplanetary past lives. And so they have karma with another or other IP souls. And at times, those IP souls also come to Earth and incarnate in their current life. And then the client is dealing with karma and people in their life with souls where there's past life IP baggage. And I've not come across this a lot of times, but I have in some cases, and I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm sure there's guides had something to do with, so past life karma, complicated relationship in a IP past life, and then those souls end up in human form and end up clashing on this planet. Carol, is that what you were asking?
I definitely agree with you. I think it's like one of those puzzles that's multidimensional, you know, you get a piece here, but there's another piece that's connected up here.
Mm.
And yeah, and I've actually had some experience with that type of thing as well. So yeah, just really love it. Thank you so much. I'm really enjoying this conversation. I'm sure everyone is. So I know Tiffany wants to ask a question.
Thank you, Linda. This has been very informative. I was going to just follow up. I had just written it down in the chat that IPs you were saying that are here to support humanity. And I was just wondering if that was dualistic or, you know, I sometimes wonder if people come here to create a ruckus too, you know, to change things in such a way that are not positive aspects for our planet, but are extremely negative to shift humanity. And so I'm just wondering on the level of paradigms being shifted, evolving consciousness, you know, how's that unfolding? I don't know if that's too big of a question.
Well, no, and I'll try to answer it. And then Tiffany, if I'm not understanding, just please say so. So I think in cases of, I mean, you all probably can tell I'm very much a news watcher and very involved with that. And there are reasons, which I won't go into, that that's part of some of my soul commitments. But like, for instance, what we would call terrorism, or what we would call the invasion of Ukraine by Russia to take over sovereign territory. I personally have no doubt that that's free will choice. That's free will choice on the part of certain countries, certain leaders. But that's not to say there aren't times when certain sort of, we might say less, whatever this means, less heinous behaviors are a push for us to evolve. But not things like terrorism and harming people and murdering people for no reason other than ego. Yeah, yeah. I'll just add really quickly, because I'm sure there are more questions and I know we'll run out of time shortly. But there's a piece that I could kind of feel my guides want me to talk about, and I'll just say this briefly. Again, none of us in this group are young souls, or you wouldn't be spending your time this way. So when we're not young souls, this may seem like a strange segue, but it feels important just to comment about. When we're not young souls, and remember that our higher selves are working, you know, if you're earth-based, your higher self is working in the earthly spiritual realm. If you're IP, your higher self is working in the IP realm. And if you're angelic, your higher self is working in the angelic realm. At times, we as more experienced souls agree to sort of upgrade ourselves, upshift ourselves. We're going to take on new responsibilities, or our higher self is working to aid humanity, and our higher self serves as a guide to aid humanity. Then at times, we're going to feel a day where we have far more anxiety than normal, a night where we don't sleep very well, a day where our stomach, we know we don't have a stomach flu type thing, but our stomach just feels off, or a day where we're just not hungry, or whatever. Those of us who are more experienced souls at times are affected by either expansion, energetic expansion that's going on to prepare us as humans to take on more responsibility, or what our higher self is doing that will show up in symptoms that you wonder, why do I feel so anxious today? Or why was I awake so much last night? That's often when change is occurring. So.
Right. And this is a little bit different from like being awake around full moon or whatever, but this is like a
Right.
sudden, happening that you were perfectly normal and then the next moment you're not.
Exactly.
So Wonderful. Do folks have any other questions? I would like to give Linda time. Well, Martha, you have a question?
Yes, thank you
Yes,
for
please.
thank you, Dr. Bachman. I appreciate all the time that you're committing to this. I have a question. I'm a clinician also, and I'm wondering if you have ever experienced having guidance or even some channeling when you're working with clients. It's sort of a spontaneous thing, or if you have a sense that there's, like Team Bachman in the spirit world behind you, helping you out.
So Martha, you're saying, I want to be sure I understand. Do I ever feel like I'm sort of being talked to or guided as I'm working with the client?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely, a lot. That things just drop into my mind that I know didn't come from me because they're too spontaneous. They're just like, oh, suddenly a thought is there or a comment is there. So for sure, so often I'm what we call in shamanism, I'm the hollow bone, um, serving
Mm,
the purpose for which I've agreed to serve. Absolutely.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
Thank you.
I'm sure, Linda, you're a guide to many as well. So not just on, in the three-dimensional world, but then in other ways too. Um, I would like to give you enough time to share with everybody, your upcoming events, the latest book you're working on, um, or anything else you would like to share with us before we
Okay, awesome.
close.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you probably all, and I can put it in the chat box, but my website where you can find what I'm doing and you can find interviews and that sort of thing is this is all run together, and I'll write it in a minute in the chat box, ravenheartcenter.com, ravenheartcenter.com. Well, there are people that think I should slow down and or maybe retire, but I don't have an interest in doing that. So that's not going to happen anytime soon. I have a new book coming out. You won't be able to put your hands on it until 2025. It will include, as all my books are, it's based on client material. So it will be filled with client regression material. And one of the reasons I decided I felt compelled to write another book is because I don't have a lot of angelic soul material in my books, but it will include other material. And I actually just honestly this morning sent the manuscript off to the publisher. But it's a very long publication cycle. So sometime in 2025, you'll be able to put your hands on that book. I am going to co-lead another group in February of 2025 to Egypt, and that's on my website. That is an amazing experience and a powerfully evolutionary experience when we're there. That's kind of awesome. I'll be giving a 2-day workshop in June in Lausanne, Switzerland. It's a live workshop if anybody happens to be anywhere near there. I'm going to teach live online regression in the fall, and I haven't taught live online in a number of years. You can take an online course that isn't live that I've taught, but it just felt like it was time. So I'll be teaching live online, past life soul regression in the fall, and between life soul regression in the spring of 2025, live online. I mean, I'm guiding regression sessions on Zoom. I no longer work in person. Zoom works beautifully. And that was kind of a gift of COVID in many ways. So, kind of off the top of my head, there's a new I've been doing periodic Gaia TV episodes with two of their hosts. And in the next probably 1 to 3 weeks, there will be a new episode with Regina Meredith that will drop. And her program is called Open Minds. And so that will show up soon in May sometime. Yeah, but if you want to get on my mailing list, which is simply an emailing list, please go to my website and sign up. And I mean, this has just been awesome because all of you, I love to talk to groups of people that are spiritually oriented and interested in expanding, because it's the only way we affect change on our planet is to keep learning, growing, evolving, and expanding our perspective. So this has been an honor, a blessing, a privilege to be with all of you guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you for making the time to be with all of us. And I know that you have a very full life, but I also love that you're so dedicated to serving on your mission, and all the work that Earl and you do together, lobbying for better air, for better water, for our climate. I'm just so grateful to have found you and to have you in my life, and uh, really this opportunity to talk to you about interplanetary souls was just an excuse to hear about all the good work that you've done. So thank you so much for that. And I would really love for all of us to just take a moment, close your eyes, and let's just pray for our planet, send a beautiful thought to whatever you're called to. You know, if there's a strife somewhere, or some cause that you um, feel you can help with energetically. So let's do that. Just take a moment, close your eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would also love to thank Carol Louie, who has created this space for all of us to gather. We have a term that we use in India, it's called Sangha. And Linda, you may be familiar with the term Sangha, and some of you who've studied Buddhism. But Sangha is a gathering of people who are devoted and dedicated to their spiritual growth, and they help each other grow. And I just really feel that way about this beautiful book club and the space that Carol has created. Thank you so much, Carol, for this opportunity to interview Linda today and for the space.
Mm. And thank you, Carol and Smita, so very much for all your commitment and coordination.
Thank you both so much. And Tiffany, who's our silent partner tonight, but she's part of the whole team organizing everything. And this was absolutely wonderful. I just feel the energy radiating out, and beautiful questions. I so love creating sacred space where we can ask these really provocative questions. So, and hold the space for one another and everything that we are working on to help ourselves, to help all of humanity. So thank you all for joining us. And next month we switch to the group regression. John was here. He had to leave. He had a problem at home that he had to take care of, so he had to leave. But he will be our facilitator for the group regression. So I hope you will join us for that. And plans are coming together so beautifully for the symposium. Mark your calendar, October 25, 26, and 27. It is going to be magical. It is magical already. I just see myself there you know, even though it's 6 months out, I'm already experiencing the magic of it. So I hope that all of you will be able to join us either in person or online. And we have some extra treats though, if you do come in person, because you know, it is right around Halloween weekend. So again, thank you, Linda.
Can I just add something really quick before we all sign off?
Yes,
I know I'm
have to
interrupting.
thank Wendy also for being a silent partner.
yes.
No, that's okay. No, because I'm also honored to have Linda as my teacher. I wanted to encourage everyone. We were talking mostly about the the souls on Earth tonight, but all of Linda's books, and of course we know the one coming up, are filled with fascinating, very, very illuminating information. And as she says, lots of quotes from her sessions, real life sessions. So I really encourage people that have been, I know, really fascinated tonight. Read all the books. You're going to want to read all the books. They're really, really good. Yeah.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much, Linda. Beautiful evening. Really loved it.
And I just want to also acknowledge Smita for joining us from the angelic realm in this incarnation.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
It's truly an honor to be in this space with all of you, truly.
Yes. Thank you. We hope you will join us again 2 months from now for the next Reincarnation Book Club. I'll put out some information. I think I've already put out information on the meetup page, and we've got an even bigger surprise in November. So worth coming back for. So thanks everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Anu, for joining
Thank you.
in.